Zach Harper turned slowly off the main road, his blinker ticking like a heartbeat as the old Ford F-150 rolled up the short gravel path to his home. Afternoon light filtered through the windshield, catching the fine layer of dust on the dash. The truck rumbled low, steady, familiar, safe. Inside, the scent of aged leather filled the cabin, but beneath it lingered something sweeter. Strawberry bubblegum, Emma's signature. A pink piece still stuck beside the air vent left behind on their morning drive. Zach glanced at it and smiled, a soft, quiet moment. The kind that said, "We're okay." He parked, engine idling for a beat before cutting it off. The German shepherd, Bruno, barked twice from the porch, then fell silent. Emma was there, too, seated on the edge of the steps, one hand resting over her pregnant belly, the other wrapped around the dog's collar, trying to keep him from lunging at the Amazon box lying crooked near the door. 8 months along and still managing everything like a general, she looked tired but calm. "I'm just going in for a sec," Zach called out, grabbing his phone and swinging the door shut. "And tell the delivery guy if he leaves another box out in the heat, I'm sending it back to Seattle." Emma rolled her eyes, half laughing, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Bruno growled again, uneasy. Zach stepped onto the walkway. 2 steps in. That's all it took. A voice tore through the stillness. "Hey, who are you?" It wasn't a neighbor's voice. It wasn't curious. It was forceful, sharp, commanding. Zach spun around just in time to see a beat-up blue Crown Victoria swerve toward the curb and stop with a screech. No plates, no markings, just a single yellow light blinking on the roof like a cheap toy. His chest tightened. 2 men jumped out. Uniforms, but not real ones. No patches, no name tags, no shields. One had a stick in his hand wrapped crudely in black tape. The other wore a Velcro badge that said HOA enforcement. Zach's blood went cold. The skinny one pointed toward the house. "Get back inside now. You're violating the neighborhood noise ordinance. That dog is not leashed." Emma stood up, confused, instinctively shielding her belly. Bruno snarled, hackles rising. Zach stepped between them, voice hard. "Who the hell are you people?" Neither man answered. The one with the baton didn't hesitate. He moved fast, reached out, and grabbed Emma by the arm. Her scream was sharp, short, muffled only by shock. There was a crack, a sound Zach would never forget, like breaking a branch in slow motion. Emma's arm twisted the wrong way, her body bent, one knee hitting the porch, other hand gripping her side. She gasped, eyes wide and wild. Bruno exploded with a howl. Time froze. The sky lost its color. Everything muted as if someone pulled the sound from the world and left only the high-pitched ring of panic. Zach's heart didn't pound. It stopped. He stared unblinking as if his mind couldn't catch up to what his eyes just saw. They heard her. They actually heard her. Not neighbors, not security, not anyone official. This was no inspection, no misunderstanding, no warning about trash cans or paint colors. This was an attack, and it was happening right on his porch. To the woman he loved, the child they were weeks from meeting, the home he had built with bare hands in late nights and overtime hours. Zach's foot shifted. He didn't even realize he was moving. His jaw clenched. The air in his lungs burned like fire. And somewhere deep in his chest, something cracked open. There were no words for what was coming, only decisions. Zach's hand went to his back pocket in a single fluid motion. The phone was warm from the sun. Screen already open. Camera app halfway loaded. His fingers moved faster than his thoughts. Instinct, not decision. He raised the phone to snap a photo of the imposters. That's when the baton came down. Not with full force, just enough to sting, just enough to send the phone flying. The tape would hit Zach's wrist with a dry thud, and his phone spun through the air before vanishing into the overgrown hedge at the edge of their yard. The man didn't even blink. "One more move and you're under arrest," he barked, pointing the tip of the baton like a finger. Violation of Section 38B, unauthorized recording of an HOA enforcement officer. Zach stared at him, stunned. Section 38B? That wasn't real. That wasn't even close to a valid citation. The man's voice carried a twisted sort of confidence. Loud, certain. Like he believed if he said it forcefully enough, it would be real. It was theater, and the costume didn't even fit right. Emma was still frozen on the porch, her breath ragged. Her right hand cradled her injured arm, her shoulders curled inward. Tears were streaming silently down her face, but she didn't make a sound. Zach could see the way her stomach trembled. Their son, Aiden, moving, reacting, kicking against the pain his mother couldn't hide. Zach's chest tightened. His hands curled into fists. "You don't get to touch my wife," he growled, each word like stone dragged across concrete. "This is private property. You don't live here. You don't work here. You don't belong here." He took a step forward. The second man, the taller one with the plastic badge, didn't back away. Instead, he grabbed Zach by the collar, pulling him in just close enough for their foreheads to almost touch. "You failed to submit your lawn treatment form on time," he hissed, lips barely moving. "And we have no record of mailbox replacement approval." Zach blinked. "What? You're out of compliance. That gives us authority to act." The words came at him like bullets, clipped, official sounding, absurd. But they said them like gospel, like it was written in some secret suburban scripture that gave them divine power. Mailbox approval. Lawn treatment forms. And yet his wife's arm was broken. His phone was gone. His dog was snarling on a leash. And two grown men, complete strangers, were on his porch pretending to govern his life. That's when it hit him. It wasn't just these two. It was bigger. It was the HOA that let this happen. The faceless organization that had been sending letters every week, harassing them over grass height and trash bins, dictating what kind of blinds they could hang in their own windows. It was the entire warped structure that allowed people like this to pretend they held authority. They fed off fear, compliance, silence. And now that system had crawled out of the mailbox and onto his porch. It had a baton. It had no name tag. And it had just broken his pregnant wife's arm. Zach didn't feel confusion anymore. Not shock either. What filled his chest now wasn't simple rage. It was deeper than that. It was bitter, cold, a dark, pulsing hatred that pushed everything else out of the way. Not just toward these two men, but toward the whole lie. The illusion of order, the fake rules, the threats disguised as regulations. He looked at Emma, still crying, still silent. And in that moment, Zach Harper knew this wasn't about code violations. This was about power, and he was done letting anyone else have it. The taller of the two imposters moved first. Zach's eyes locked on him, every muscle in his body coiled like a wire pulled too tight. The man popped open the battered trunk of the Crown Victoria, digging around in the cluttered mess inside. For a second, Zach hoped it might be over. Maybe they realized they'd gone too far. Maybe they'd leave? But no, the man straightened up. Plastic zip ties in one hand, a cheap cracked walkie-talkie in the other. It wasn't even a real radio. Just an old toy someone might find at the flea market. Worn and scratched, barely holding together. No working microphone, no backup support, no dash cams mounted on their car, no official forms, no backup badges, nothing. Nothing but arrogance. They thought fear was enough. Thought the sight of plastic cuffs and a few barked orders would bring him to his knees. But they had made a fatal mistake. The thinner one approached, shoulders back, baton swinging lightly from his wrist like he had all the time in the world. "You are under arrest for noncompliance and disrespect toward an HOA enforcement officer," he said, voice low, curling the words like smoke. "Get down on your knees." His tone wasn't angry. It wasn't even threatening. It was patronizing. The way someone talks to a dog they think will roll over if kicked enough times. Zach didn't move. Not right away. He slowly lifted his hands halfway, palms forward, not in surrender, in calculation. Every second felt stretched thin, humming with the invisible weight of what he was about to do. He spoke, and his voice was steady. Quiet. Almost too quiet to hear over the pounding of blood in his ears. "You broke her arm," he said, looking straight into the man's eyes. "She's carrying my son. You don't even care who we are, do you?" A flicker crossed the fake officer's face. Not fear, not shame, amusement. The man smirked, a crooked, lazy grin that said everything. That said he thought this was funny, that he thought none of it mattered. That was it. That was the exact moment when the world split clean in two before and after. There would be no talking, no appeals, no waiting for someone else to do the right thing. Zach's hands moved. Not fast, not reckless, calm, methodical. His right hand slipped inside his jacket, fingers wrapping around the familiar shape resting against his ribs. Cool steel, heavy, comforting, real. Glock 19. He hadn't planned on needing it today. It was for long drives, remote roads, gas stations at night. A habit formed after reading too many headlines about people who didn't make it home because they believed nothing bad would happen. Today wasn't a drive. Today wasn't a headline. Today was his house, his wife, his unborn son. The pistol slid free, natural as breathing. His finger stayed outside the trigger guard, disciplined even though every nerve screamed for release. He didn't point it yet. He didn't have to. The weight of it shifted the air around him. And for the first time, the fake officers hesitated. Tiny, almost invisible. But Zach saw it. Saw the recognition, the flicker of doubt. Good. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want blood. He wanted them to know that no matter what badge they printed out, no matter what uniform they stitched together, no matter how many fake laws they shouted here on this ground in this home, they had no authority. Only one authority stood here now, and it was armed. It all unfolded in less than a heartbeat. Zach moved first. Instincts honed not by training, but by the simple, unbreakable truth that no one was going to hurt his family while he still stood. He threw his body in front of Emma, shielding her, pulling her down behind him as the air thickened, charged with raw electricity. The Glock 19 came up in a single smooth motion, steady as bedrock. The first shot cracked through the afternoon air, sharp, clean. A warning fired straight up into the cloudless sky. A command written in thunder. Stop. The imposters flinched, frozen for a split second in pure shock. Zach didn't wait. The second shot drilled into the thigh of the man with the duct tape baton. The impact knocked him sideways, leg buckling as he cried out, the baton clattering uselessly against the driveway. The third shot snapped into the shoulder of the one with the fake badge. He spun back, staggering, the cheap plastic flashing against the sunlight as he fell. They didn't posture anymore, didn't shout legal threats, didn't talk about lawn ordinances. They screamed, stumbling, dragging themselves toward their battered Crown Victoria. Panic written all over their faces. Down, Emma! Zach roared over his shoulder, the command slicing through the chaos. Bruno, faithful and furious, lunged forward in a blur of teeth and muscle, clamping down on one of the imposter's legs. The man screamed higher, wilder, trying to kick the dog off. But Bruno only dug in harder, a growl rumbling low and deep from his chest. Zach's hands stayed firm on the Glock. His arms didn't shake. His heartbeat didn't skip. His mind was clearer than it had ever been. He hadn't fired to kill. He hadn't fired to maim. He fired to deliver a message, one written in lead and finality. This is where you end. Right here. Right now. Each squeeze of the trigger wasn't about rage. It wasn't revenge. It was judgment. The magazine emptied with a metallic click, sharp and final. Zach lowered the Glock slightly, stepping forward, boots crunching across the gravel. He moved without rush, without fear. Each stride deliberate as the two men writhed in the grass, clutching at their wounds, gasping and babbling incoherent radio codes like children pretending to be soldiers. Code 97 Alpha, one of them wailed toward the broken radio, still clutched in his trembling hand. Request. Request assistance. There was no assistance coming. There were no backup officers, no shield, no badge, no authority, only consequences.